Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Vivian Guevara, Training and Technical Assistance Program Coordinator at Housing Action, Illinois. Can you please raise your hand and let me know if everybody can hear me well? Yes, I see a few hands here. Thank you so much. That's great. So thank you for participating in our webinar entitled Partnerships, Networks, and Merges. Oh my, an introduction to a strategic restructuring. Please note that this presentation is being recorded and will be available for download in our website. Also, I will send you by email the PowerPoint slides today. Our presenter today is Mary Anderson, Managing Director of Mission Plus Strategy Consulting. Mary has over 14 years of experience at the executive level in a variety of government and nonprofit organizations with demonstrated success in diverse environments, including startup, established, and turnout situations. An attorney by training, Mary has worked with a diverse client base that includes housing, development, and counseling organizations, human services organizations, healthcare organizations, to name a few, with budgets sizes from 500,000 to 150 million. Mission Plus Strategy Consultancy focuses exclusively on nonprofits and the leads to accelerate their social value with practices areas in strategy, leadership, culture, and structure. So thank you again for participating in our webinar. If you have any questions, please write your question in the window, and I will be sure that our panelists answer it during the presentation. Mary?
Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Mary Anderson. I'm Managing Director of Mission Plus Strategy Consulting. And as Vivian just said, at Mission Plus Strategy, we're a consulting firm that works exclusively with not-for-profits on strategy, leadership, culture, and structure. And in my position, I support organizations on internal and external strategy. I coach executive directors on leadership. I help board of directors build effective structures. And I also help organizations develop and execute growth strategies. One of our areas of expertise is strategic restructuring. So the question we always get is, what is strategic restructuring? So this is when two or more organizations decide to combine their programs or business structures in order to maximize their missions. Now, with the changing external climate we have, with budget cuts happening and a move to managed care, and internal challenges of the need for general operating dollars, many more organizations are looking to strategic restructuring. Now, I assume most of you listening today are facing very similar challenges and opportunities. That is why we've created this webinar to give you a brief overview of the types of restructuring options there are for you. So over the course of the next hour, we're going to cover three topics. First, an explanation of nonprofit strategic restructuring and when it can be a beneficial strategy. Second, the specific examples of restructuring models and the pros and cons of each of those. And then finally, we're going to talk to you about how to engage your board of directors and the idea of exploring a restructuring strategy. Now, today, there are a lot of environmental drivers pushing not-for-profit executives and board leaders to think about partial or full consolidation options. So let's review some of those options right now. First, economic forces. Right now, here in the state of Illinois, a big one is the state budget crisis. It's also the remnants from the Great Recession. Second, pressure to raise unrestricted funding, especially for those back office expenses, and especially when there's fewer dollars available to do so. Third, government moving towards managed care contracting. And the whole point of managed care is to get costs down and to drive contractors to consolidate. Fourth, a shift to measuring results in not-for-profit organizations. And let's be frank, measuring results is expensive. It requires hardware, software, and the personnel who can manage those systems and analyze the results. 5, there's more competition from not-for-profits as well as for-profits that are moving into the traditional not-for-profit space. And there are more not-for-profits being created every day. In Cook County alone, there's over 20,000 not-for-profits. 6, the impending leadership gap in management. Compass Point has shown that 75% of executives they've interviewed plan to leave their jobs in 5 years. And the Bridgespan Group had a study that found over the next decade, organizations will need to attract and to develop 640,000 new senior managers. That's equivalent to 2.4 times the number currently employed for organizations with revenues greater than $250,000. What does that mean in real terms? By next year, we're going to need 80,000 new senior managers per year. 7, there's a big political push for smaller government. We're seeing this not only at the national level, but here in the state of Illinois. And 8, complexity of social issues as the clients bring to the table. This number and complexity really makes it close to impossible for one agency to serve all the needs of a family or an individual. Substance abuse, mental illness, unemployment, education. And so collaborations and partnerships and coming together is really more critical. And then finally, the Affordable Care Act. The full impact of the Affordable Care Act is not really known yet, but we're already seeing huge changes in how we pay for behavioral and primary services. So the impact of this can be enormous. Okay, well, what is it we really mean by collaboration? So I'm just going to take a moment to define some terms for you. So in the not-for-profit sector, we throw the term collaboration around quite a bit. It's a bit of a kind of a buzzword at the moment, and it really encompasses a lot. So in this slide here, I'm suggesting to you that collaboration is an umbrella under which all forms of not-for-profit partnerships really fit. So if we thought of collaboration as a spectrum, and we saw that spectrum going from 0 to 100%, and that spectrum measured the degree to which 2 or more not-for-profits needed to integrate themselves, to integrate either their corporation or their program structures in order to achieve a type of collaboration. These are all the different types of collaborations that would be possible. So if you look on the very far left, we would see membership organizations and advocacy or coalitions. So these are the least integrated. There's no need to integrate the corporate structure or the program structure in order to achieve their goals. But as we move to the right, you'll see a greater and greater need for integration of the corporate or program structures in order to achieve the goals of the collaboration. And when you get all the way to the right side, where it's deep blue, that's where we have mergers and parent subsidiary structures. These require higher and more complete integration to achieve their goals. So this area that's kind of all shaded in blue, from light blue to dark blue, that area is the types of collaborations that we think of when we talk of strategic restructuring. And these are the types we'll be talking about today. So we're all on the same page. The definition of restructuring that we will use is a strategy that consolidates corporate or program structure in a variety of ways, all or in part, together with one or more not-for-profit organizations in order to advance mission. So what are some of the benefits of not-for-profits are seeking when they do this restructuring? Well, you can see there's quite a few here, so I won't cover all of them, but let me just kind of point out a few of them. Sort of a major one that we see with clients is when clients want to expand their geographic reach of their organization or improve their market position. These kind of formal collaborations really help them do that. It also allows them to grow and increase their service offerings to their clients, and also to collaborate and share knowledge and increase professional development for their staff, as well as increase opportunities for their clients. And also, the part I really like is that strengthening the staff and the board and the volunteer leadership by integrating organizations. So these are just some of the many benefits you can have from restructuring. So before we look at examples of some of these models, it's important to remember that you need to understand the purpose of the change that you're making. The purpose of that change will define the structure of the change. For the structure of the change then determines the outcome, it determines the changes that happen, and it also affects the behavior you're seeking for the organization. So purpose defines structure, and that structure breeds behavior. So there are many different examples of the type of structures we're going to look at. So we decided today to pull out 5 different options that you could look at. And these move along that spectrum that I talked about. And we're going to talk about joint venture partnerships, management service organizations, alliances, parent subsidiary corporations, and then finally we'll talk about mergers. Now we're going to begin with structures that require the least amount of corporate or program integration and then progressively move towards more integration. Now the restructuring model that requires the least amount of integration and which is still part of the restructuring portfolio is the joint venture partnership. Now our first model we'll explore of a joint venture partnership is between the Nora Theater Company and the Underground Railroad Theater, resulting in the joint venture partnership called the Central Square Theater. Now, a joint venture is an undertaking of 2 or more nonprofit organizations for the accomplishment of a specific goal. Joint ventures can be legally constituted or they can be informal. And there are many kinds of joint ventures. Now, this one is a joint venture partnership that's governed by a not-for-profit board of directors. This means that the joint venture was separately incorporated as a 501c3 nonprofit corporation and has its own board of directors governing it. So let's talk about the organizations in this example. We have the Nora Theater Company. It was started in 1988, and it produces contemporary and modern theater pieces that champion women. And then we have the Underground Railway Theater, which was started in 1978, and it combines puppetry, actors, and music to create professional theater pieces and educational programming offering compelling social commentary. Now, neither of these companies had ever had a permanent theater space, and both wanted to build a space on their own, but just did not have the capacity to build one themselves. So they created a partnership, and they called it the Central Square Theater. And that represents their collective efforts, and it will also allow them to each maintain their organization's unique identity. Now, their first effort in this joint venture partnership was to raise the funds and build this new state-of-the-art theater building. How they did that is they actually partnered with the Community Development Department of the City of Cambridge and also with MIT. Now, MIT constructed a 3-story facility with 225 seats and additional facilities for each organization's program. And that capital investment was worth $20 million. And what MIT is doing now they constructed that facility is that they're leasing it back to the 2 companies. Central Square Theater raised $3.5 million in a capital campaign for their portion of the budget. Now, this joint venture partnership originally started out as a real estate venture, but over time it has grown into an administrative partnership as well. The 2 companies have hired a joint executive director to run the Central Square Theater. And now the Central Square Theater provides both of these not-for-profits. It provides them with comprehensive joint strategic planning. It provides them with shared staff and combined resources. And also it provides them with centralized accounting, administration, marketing, as well as front and back of house positions. It has allowed them to increase the quality of those services by combining their resources. Now, each of these not-for-profits are staying autonomous. But by doing this partnership and taking the real estate and taking those kind of administrative and back office issues and making them into a separate partnership, the individual organizations can concentrate on their mission. And in effect, they actually control the Central Square Theater because the 2 organizations, Nora Theater and Underground Railway Theater, control Central Square Theater's board of directors. So that's our first model about joint venture partnerships. We have a second one we want to provide you as well. Now, the second example comes from Chattanooga, Tennessee, and it's called the Chattanooga Museum Collaboration. This collaboration combines with the Tennessee Aquarium, the Hunter Museum of American Art, and the Discovery Museum. These 3 museums form a museum campus in downtown Chattanooga. And if you haven't been there, it's just gorgeous. It's a really great campus. In 2001, these 3 elected to form a partnership as a practical solution to a number of problems they were facing in the museum community. And most of that, the biggest need was the need to spread their back office expenses more efficiently. So first, the Discovery Museum and the Hunter Museum really needed help on the business side. They did not have that internal expertise or capacity. But the aquarium was really well equipped to provide that. On the other side, the aquarium had excess expertise, depth, and capacity, and they thought they could use it productively by helping the sister museums, and they could also earn some income from doing so. And then all three combined really wanted to improve the visitor experience to Chattanooga, and by each museum better focusing on their mission, which then, of course, helps all three of them and also helps the whole city of Chattanooga. So they decided they had two main requirements for their partnership. First, in their partnership, each of these organizations wanted to remain an autonomous organization. 3 separate museums, 3 separate brands. They really wanted to, second, they wanted to maintain those individual identities. So they didn't want to become one giant museum blob. Instead, they still wanted to be the Discovery Museum, the Tennessee Aquarium, and the Hunter Museum, and for branding purposes. So this is what they created. The Tennessee Aquarium became the lead partner, and that lead partner provided administrative services on a fee-for-service basis. So the Tennessee Aquarium provided the other two, HR services, finance and accounting services, IT, marketing, retail sales, some financial assistance for all the 3 museums. They had a joint fundraising department. They also now, as they've grown over time, they have actually now speak with one voice on HR issues, which makes it much easier for employees and allows them to provide more benefits for their employees. And then now also they're doing a lot of joint marketing too. They do joint advertising buys, TV and radio, and also they also have a joint product purchasing service. So while it started out as some key functions, over time it has grown, and now they're even doing joint fundraising. I just want to pause for a moment to see if folks have any questions about the joint venture partnership model. Okay, so I'm going to move on now to our next model, and this next model is the Management Service Organization. Now, many of you may not have heard of a management service organization, so let me define it for you. A management service organization is a freestanding corporate entity that provides services to 2 or more not-for-profit organizations, and it does it on a fee-for-service basis. And it does this in order to gain operating efficiencies as well as to increase the quality of the management systems in 1 or more areas by consolidating that costly overhead. Now, this management service organization is governed by a board of directors representing the specific not-for-profit sponsors who are engaged in that entity and who are using those MSO or Management Service Organization services. So we're looking here at the MAC Alliance, the MAC Commonwealth Alliance, the Alliance of Connected Communities in Massachusetts. There's 10 members of this alliance, and they're an alliance of community members who elected to join this management service organization. So it's separate, not-for-profits who have decided and elected to join this. Now, this management service organization, they purchase 3 types of services: finance, human resources, and IT, information technology. So today, these 10 not-for-profits are members, and this management service organization only sells these services to their members. So it's really a true collaborative, a kind of a feedback loop. Now, the proposition for MAC Commonwealth that it advertises to members and potential members is that this management service organization allows members to continue to work on their missions while they collectively, with the MSO, they can achieve administrative expertise in depth. They can manage their expenses while offering fully scalable services. They also can manage continuity and reduce their risk. They can have access to secure state-of-the-art systems and technology, and they also can save time. So once again, by having 10 organizations coming together and purchasing from a management service organization, they're getting higher quality services than they would have gotten if they were getting these services just on their own. So what they found is that they actually were able to decrease their costs over time. Over time, they were able to see decreased costs in employee benefits, in payroll processing, telecommunications, in technology, as well as audit expenses. And also, one thing that they found, which is a little hard to put a price on, but still very important, they also saw a reduction in fraud in all the individual organizations who were members because they had higher quality reporting. So in the first full year that MAC Commonwealth was in existence, MAC Commonwealth was able to provide its members savings equal to 10% of their service fee. In the second year of operation, members reduced their costs by up to 25, in some cases 50% of their service costs. And that's because of this consolidation. Now, MAC Commonwealth has now expanded their services since they first started, and now they have services in third-party negotiations and joint purchasing. They're also doing direct personnel management, facilities management, and also even doing some development and fundraising services as well. So, once again, I want to stop here and see if there's any questions about this model of a managed service organization. Okay, so I'm now going to move on to the next model, which is the shared service alliance model. And you'll see here what we have in front of us is your classic spoke and hub alliance model. It actually even looks like a wheel. So the spoke and hub alliance model provides administrative and other shared services to a group of autonomous, not-for-profit organizations. But all these organizations are in the same business or in geographic proximity to one another. So they have something in common, but they're still individual, separate 501c3s. Now, there's many ways to put a hub and spoke model together. Today, I'm going to give you an example that comes from the Early Learning Ventures in in Colorado, and this model was supported by the Mirage Foundation. Now, the theory in this business model is that by combining back office operations of these very small not-for-profits, they can support scale and sustainability throughout their whole industry. So in this case, that's early childhood. So by creating these efficiencies, each of these organizations can deepen the quality of their businesses and the services because then it frees up their program staff to actually be focusing on programming, which is what they do best. In this case, early childhood education services, and they're pushing those administrative issues into that hub where the shared staff exists. Now, these agencies, the reason why they did this is they really wanted to boost the quality of their programs, but in order to do that, they needed to hire more experienced and qualified staff. And in order to do that, that requires increasing the size of their budget. But the competition to that was that they have families who pay for these childhood services, and they also have government contracts who will not compensate them for any more. So how do you increase quality and invest in quality when you have a limited amount of resources coming from your government contracts or capping you, as well as the ability of your clients to be paying more? So in this model, one not-for-profit grew its back office operation. So one of the spokes became the hub, and the other not-for-profits agreed to become affiliates and purchase their services from that hub organization. Now, what's happened over time is that costs have been continuing to shift to the hub, and that bottom line began to grow. Now, here are some of the services that these very small childhood centers are receiving today as a result of the shared service alliance. These are organizations that have very small budgets, like under $1 million, and now they actually have access to research and development. So not only are they getting information technology, but they're able to do data collection and real comprehensive evaluations of their programs. They're also able to do bulk purchase of goods and services, which is giving them a discount on costs. They're also able to now provide comprehensive services in health and mental health, social services, and family support, not just for clients, but for their employees as well. They're also been able to get much more classroom support. So now they can actually mentor their teachers and can do that professional development. They're able to go in and actually do classroom assessments and have that kind of support. What also they've been able to do is to really increase their fundraising and their fund development from public and private sources by being able to bring those services together in one hub. They've also been able to increase the quality of their staff through staff recruitment and screening, and then also through increased quality in their human resources, so that they're able to provide a higher quality health and retirement benefits, unemployment insurance, et cetera, which before they couldn't do just on their own. Plus now they're getting these administrative services of payroll, billing, fee collection, that sort of thing, that on their own as such a small organization that we're not able to do effectively or efficiently. Now there are some downsides to this model. The downside to this model is these organizations are giving up some autonomy in their operations, right? So they are all agreeing and buying into a similar HR system. So they have similar hiring practices, they're having similar training, similar professional development. So there is some give and take on that. They also have completely now integrated their business functions, which creates that efficiency. But what that does do is that if one of these organizations decides it wants to leave, and it makes it very difficult to unravel. And also, this takes coordination. So there is staff time for each of these organizations that has to be devoted to meeting and planning and investing in making sure that this collaboration is working, that the hub is working. So there is staff time that needs to be budgeted that goes towards the collaboration itself, the shared service alliance itself. So that's a shared service model. Now remember, we're going down the line here, so we're becoming more and more integrated with each of these models. And now we're going to be moving into one of the definitely more integrated models, and that's the parent subsidiary corporation model. And what we're going to show you here is a sample that's called an umbrella structure for a parent corporation. Now, an umbrella structure means that you have several separate organizations that are grouped together under one parent organization or parent umbrella organization. So this allows these previously independent corporations to maintain some degree of autonomy. And so, but the typical configuration of parent corporation, you really are shifting a significant amount of control to that parent corporation. And you can kind of see that here. So in this model, you have St. Elizabeth Corporation, that's the parent corporation, and then you have these individual subsidiaries, St. Elizabeth Manor, St. Elizabeth Home, St. Elizabeth Court, and then you'll hear about how they join Cornerstone Adult Services. Part of their autonomy, part of their control is shifting up to that St. Elizabeth Community Parent Corporation. But let's talk about the benefits of this model, right? So what's great about this model is it really helps sequence services on behalf of clients. So what happens is that parent corporation can be sequencing services, so then the client is having a seamless experience, and you can have that vertical as well as horizontal integration of services. So for example, a client can walk in and maybe they first start working, interacting in assisted living, but then they need more assistance, and so then they move into the nursing home. But by having that parent corporation coordinating these services and sequencing these services, it becomes a more seamless process for that client. And that's really that role of that parent corporation, is to really foster and facilitate that integration of services. So as a client needs more services or needs different services, that parent coordination does that integration and that facilitation. But what's nice about this is that while control is shifting from these subsidiaries to the parent corporation, you're still keeping your local ties. And we all know that the real strength in our organizations is those ties to our communities. And so you can still keep that by having local individual governing boards for those subsidiaries. Now granted, those local governing boards do have to report up to that parent corporation, but you can still have those individual governing boards and some of that autonomy, so you can keep those ties to the community. And by having this model of a parent corporation with subsidiaries, you're avoiding creating a giant mega corporation, right? This is local organizations that have ties to their community. They can keep those ties, but they're getting the benefits of having a larger corporation, so they can get those kind of economies of scale. What's also nice about this model is that it allows these organizations to really adjust to new market realities. So especially in situations like this where you have managed care coming in, by having a parent corporation who can coordinate and run those large government contracts, you can still get the benefits of that centralization, but still also have the benefits of having that local feel and that local connection. Now also, by doing this, you're protecting not only those local relationships, but you're also protecting some of the kind of those local entry points for clients. As you can see here with St. Elizabeth, you could have clients entering at very different places. We might have a client entering into the services through the adult daycare, or you could have them entering through the assisted living. But it still allows for multiple entry points for your clients, but still giving them the benefit of having all of these integrated services. So with St. Elizabeth's community, their client base was the frail and elderly, as you can see with the assisted living and the nursing home. But they also wanted to add an adult daycare program. Part of that, we want to create another entry point, and so they could also have a more extensive array of services. And so since they already have this parent subsidiary model, they were actually able to approach another not-for-profit, Cornerstone Adult Services, and ask them to become a subsidiary of the organization so they could expand the services for their clients. But then when they can provide Cornerstone, they provided Cornerstone all these benefits of being part of a larger organization that benefits professional development and administrative efficiency, et cetera. And then from the client perspective, it expanded the services that were available to them. Now, parent assistance can be a little complicated, so I do want to see if anyone has any questions, and we also have another model that we can look at too. So another model of this parent subsidiary comes out of southeastern Pennsylvania, and this is the Liberty Lutheran Services in southeast Pennsylvania. So in 2000, there were 4 Lutheran social service agencies in that geographic area. And they really recognized, we've got an opportunity here to really collaborate together as a united organization in order to more effectively and efficiently respond to the needs of our larger community. They also knew that they really wanted to deliver higher quality services, and that was getting much more difficult to do as individual organizations. And they also wanted to maintain sufficient administrative capacity. So they recognized that a collaboration would allow them to share and consolidate those administrative expenses and redirect those savings into delivering higher quality programs. So thus they created Liberty Lutheran Services as a parent corporation. It was a brand new not-for-profit 501c3. It acts as an umbrella over these 4 or 5 separate not-for-profits. And then so they created Liberty Lutheran Services in 2001. Now, since they first started, they've added new partners. So Liberty Lutheran Services is now up to 8 affiliates, and now they serve over 21,000 people a year. It is now 15 years old. They started out with 4 organizations, and now they're up to 8. And now they have over 1,100 employees, and they actually have now 29 locations across eastern Pennsylvania. So by creating this initial structure of an umbrella corporation with subsidiaries, it also created a foundation for growth for them. So they started out with 4 organizations, but over time, because they already had this initial structure, they can continue to grow. Now, each of the original partners are affiliates, or what you would think of as subsidiary corporations, and the Liberty Lutheran Services has its own CEO. Now, when it was first founded, that CEO of Liberty Lutheran Services was actually one of the executive directors of one of the subsidiaries, and actually just moved up into that CEO position. Now, the board of directors of Liberty Lutheran Services is composed of board representatives of each of the affiliates. So that's you can see how the affiliates are really controlling the parent. And then also the executive directors of each of those affiliates became the vice presidents of those affiliates and are now members of the executive team. So you have board representation on the governing board of the parent, and then basically the senior management team of the parent is the leaders of each of the affiliates. Now, each of these still have kept their board of directors, they've kept their names, they've kept their brands, and they've kept a lot of their autonomy. However, this is where that control shift happens. The parent board for Liberty Lutheran Services does have overriding kind of veto power over any decision of an individual affiliate. So that's where that power shift is changing. When you move into this parent-subsidiary model, while there's still autonomy between the affiliates, right, and you still have some control because you have board representation on the parent governing board, that control dynamic, though, has shifted from the subsidiaries to the parent. And so that overarching parent does have that overall control. Now, what's great about this Liberty Lutheran Services is that they can manage everything from strategic planning to measuring outcomes and evaluations to creating time frames. So they're really able to manage services across the board. And once again, from a client perspective, the client has multiple entry points, but once they enter into the organization, they have a whole slew of services that they now have access to that are being facilitated and integrated by the umbrella parent organization. So that's the parent subsidiary model. Now we're going to go to the most integrated of all, and that is the merger model. So here's the difference between that parent corporation subsidiary model and a merger. In a merger, there is one 501c3, so it's one organization at the end. You have one governing board of directors, and you have one CEO. So as we saw over here, we had multiple boards, and we had multiple leaders. And you're in a merger model, everything is merged into one. So the governance issues in a merger are exactly the same issues that they are in a single not-for-profit organization, because after a merger is completed, you do have a single not-for-profit organization. And the remaining board of directors runs the now larger entity, and it's managed by a single CEO. So during the merger negotiation process, the trick is how to integrate these two previous single entities into a single organization with a single governance structure. But it's very doable. We do it all the time with clients. So we're going to talk to you about an example we have here, a client of ours. This is a story of the Badger Association of the Blind and Visually Impaired and the Center for the Blind and Visually Impaired Children, which is based in Milwaukee. So two different organizations.
Mary,
oh, yeah.
Sorry, we have a question here.
Oh, sure. So let's see. So this is back at the for the parent subsidiary model. So how does the funding flow? It's being asked. Does the umbrella keep a portion to pay for the administrative services? Yes to both of those. So what happens is each of the affiliates has their own budget. In some parent subsidiary organizations, those subsidiaries then pay a fee up to the parent organization, but the parent organization also can provide across the board funding down to the subsidiaries. So we have seen models, for example, where the leaders of the subsidiaries are paid by the parent organization, but the subsidiaries pay an administrative fee to the parent organization to cover all those back office expenses, so the HR, all of that. So that is one way to do it. So it is, so it can be structured either way. There are some structures of a parent subsidiary where there is much more control in the parent, and so then that parent is dictating to the subsidiaries what their budget is. But the more traditional model is that each of these subsidiaries, because they have their own governing board, creates their own not-for-profits. They're paying up an administrative fee to that parent. Are there other questions about this model? Don't worry, there'll be lots of time at the end, too.
Yeah, so, well, somebody's asking if the presentation is being recorded, and yes, it is recorded, and we are going to send you the link, so in that way you can have access in another time to the presentation. I think that's it, Mary.
Okay, wonderful, great. So let's go on to the merger, and then we'll definitely have some time at the end for some more questions. So we're looking at this merger example here. This is between the Badger Association of the Blind as well as the Center for the Blind and Visually Impaired Children. So the Badger Association serves adults, and the center serves children. So different client base. same issue. We're looking at blindness and visual impairment, but different age populations. The goal of the two organizations is that they wanted to serve a continuum of people who were blind or visually impaired. And so thus the clients then would have a continuous experience. It wouldn't have to shift organizations and shift services just based upon an age. Also, the center was very small and needed a larger physical space to accommodate their programs. When they began negotiations with the Badger Association, the center itself actually had a vacancy in the executive director position. So that really created the opening for discussing a merger with the Badger Association. Now on the Badger side, the Badger Association really wanted to serve a younger population as well as the adults, as well as they had access vacant space in the building that they were in, and which would work perfectly for the center's programs, and the center's programs would fit in very well there. So when they decided to do a merger and they went through their negotiations, they decided that the center would be a dissolving not-for-profit. So they would dissolve the center's not-for-profit status, and it would be merged into the Badger Association. So since both organizations were expanding and changing their mission because of the merger, they decided for branding purposes that they would rename the organization Vision Forward, and they created a new brand. So legally, behind the scenes, one organization dissolved and merged into the other. But forwardly to the public and the branding is that they came together to create this great brand new Vision Forward Association that brings in the strengths of both these organizations and expands services for clients. So in order to do this, they took advantage of the new branding and the merging and did a $1.5 million fundraising effort. And they used it as a capital campaign. And then with that $1.5 million, they opened a state-of-the-art program space for infants and toddlers inside the Vision Forward headquarters, and then united all of the staff in the building. So they took the physical building of the Badger Association, took advantage of that excess space, did a capital campaign underneath their new brand and their new logo and their new look, and used the excitement of that coming together to do that capital campaign, invest in the building, and create a real state-of-the-art program. So now they have services from infants to elderly working with the blind and visually impaired. Now, what they decided to do on the leadership of the organization is both executive directors were retained. So the interim executive director of the center is now the deputy director of Vision Forward. And the executive director of the Badger Association is now the executive director CEO of Vision Forward. They had to change the job descriptions, obviously, and both leaders had to give up parts of their job that they loved, but they also were able to give up parts of their job that they didn't necessarily like. And so they were really able to that leadership. And what was helpful is because the center did have that opening in the executive director position that allowed for some flexibility in kind of restructuring of what the management of the new organization was going to be. So the type of merger that the Vision Forward was a merger by dissolution of one organization into another. So you have Corporation A, you have Corporation B. Corporation A merges or dissolves and goes into Corporation B, and that's the organization. That is the most common form of merger. You also have merger by dissolution, or what we call asset acquisition, where you have Corporation A completely dissolved, and then the assets of Corporation A are brought into Corporation B. That is done many times when you have a very small corporation who is merging with a larger one, or also maybe it's an organization where there's a fantastic program and folks want the program to survive, but the rest of the organization, there may be outstanding liabilities, et cetera, that need to be addressed. And so, a complete merger can't occur instead an acquisition of assets. And then there's a third model, which is not used very often, but can be used, where both organizations dissolve and create a brand new third 501c3. This rarely happens because it takes so long nowadays to get a 501c3 status. It's kind of not really worth it. But all three of these, the structure of it behind the scenes, it can, that can be whatever is best based upon what the liability situation is, et cetera. But when it comes to what's going to be the experience for the clients and what's going to be the experience for the staff and what's going to be kind of the public perception, that can be really controlled by the boards and by the staff in deciding what is it that we want to going forward. So, for example, we recently had a client where it was an asset acquisition. One organization had their assets acquired by another organization, but the identity of the dissolving organization and the quality of the program still exists. So you now have, here's Corporation B that's great with this fabulous Corporation A program. So you can still keep that branding. You can still keep all those relationships with funders and with other supporting stakeholders, even if behind the scenes, structurally, things have been done differently. So there's the structural aspect that needs to happen, but then you think about, well, what culturally do we want, and also what do we want for the benefit of our clients and the benefit of our supporting stakeholders. So there's a branding conversation that's separate from the actual structure conversation. And we can get into that in the questions as well. But the benefits of a merger is that what's really nice about that is that you can eliminate excess capacity. You don't need two bookkeepers anymore. You can have one accounting person. You don't need, so you can get rid of some of those things. Also, you can have economies of scale. Many times when organizations want to grow, instead of trying to create growth from scratch, it's much easier to acquire or to merge with another organization, because you already get all the benefits of that program that's already been created and the relationships that have already been created. So it's a really great growth strategy. Also, it can also reduce competition, let's be frank. But if you have organizations that are merging together, that decreases competition and can increase capacity with fundraisers. And then also, many times when you have organizations merge, they're merging because both organizations want to diversify their sources of revenue. So you may have one organization that's very dependent upon government contracts and another organization that's very dependent upon private fundraising, individual donors and foundations. And so by merging together, they're both able to diversify their resources because they've been bringing in funding from different sources. And now they can expand the pot by coming together. And also, what I think is most exciting about mergers is you really can create multidisciplinary approaches. So we talked early on in the presentation about one of the reasons why folks look at mergers is that you have clients who walk in your door who have multiple challenges, and having one organization trying to deal with all those challenges is really hard. You can merge organizations and create multidisciplinary wraparound services for your clients by having multiple organizations either partner together or merge together. All right, so we have a lot of models that provided you here. Let's talk about some of the pros and cons of doing strategic restructuring. Now, here's some of the challenges in restructuring models. Especially during that transition period, it can be kind of unclear the chain of command, like who is making those final decisions. And so there's definitely an adjustment period as you are kind of building that decision-making structure. As I mentioned before, you really need to build in time for process, right? So decisions are not going to be just one and done. There's going to be ongoing work to make sure that the collaboration, the partnership, the alliance, et cetera, is working correctly and it's working well, and that takes staff time, so you have to really kind of build in that staff time. There also sometimes can be inequitable distribution of duties. We see this sometimes with mergers, that two organizations come together. You have to sit there and kind of like figure out, okay, what does your director do versus what our director does, and kind of figure out who should be doing what. So that definitely takes some time. That also walks into the lack of clarity around roles. There really needs some time needs to be taken about, if we have different titles and people doing different things, we need to be clear about who is doing what and who has responsibility for what. Especially when the partnerships are first coming together, middle managers sometimes have to do some double duty. That transition period takes some time to kind of figure out how are we going to be working together. So you have your middle managers who are doing the programming they should be doing every single day, but then they're going to have this additional duty now of working to be able to make the partnership work. And then also, staff turnover. A lot of people don't like change, and so if they don't like change, they may be moving on. So that's something to keep in account. Now, I see here that there is a question here. We have a question saying, in any of the models that we have, are any of these agencies in danger of closing? Is it a good thing for agencies who are closing to do this? In the examples I've given you today, these agencies were not in danger of closing. However, I can tell you that we've had multiple clients who have been in financial situations where they're like, wow, we need to address this now. So yes, if agencies are in financially challenging states, they should definitely be exploring restructuring. And I'm going to say this, you should be doing it sooner rather than later. We have organizations who have come to us who unfortunately have waited too long. And by the time they have come to us, they are in such bad financial shape that a restructuring is not really an option. What could be an option, though, at that point is a dissolution with an asset acquisition, where they could have their assets and their programs being acquired by another organization. But this is a really good process. I mean, I'll say this. A year and a half ago, when Governor Rauner was elected, and I knew that there was going to be a big budget fight, Gina and I were out singing, "Folks need to explore strategic restructuring because it's going to be a budget fight." We're still saying that now. We anticipate the state budget crisis is going to continue for multiple years, and so organizations need to be exploring these options now. I hope that answers your question. So let's think of the positives. So let's talk about the positives of restructuring. So what's nice about restructuring is that based upon where you are on that continuum, you can pretty much disable these things pretty easily. So if you're doing that joint ventures partnership at the beginning, that you can test things out and you can do a partnership on one aspect of your work and then grow into it. You don't have to go whole hog into a complete merger right away. So you have various different options that allow you to disentangle if it doesn't work out, right? I'm also hoping that you've been able to see that through many of these models, organizations can still keep their autonomy. They can keep control, they can keep governance control, they can keep their identities, but they get the benefits of being able to working collaboratively with other organizations. They also allow folks to improve their market position by working with other organizations. They can either expand their geographic reach or also just expand their presence. One of the things that people don't recognize that is really important is it really offers legal protection. I mean, especially when organizations can increase their HR capacity, that really helps protect organizations. And then especially if you're looking at that parent subsidiary model, that is one way for organizations to really help protect themselves. And that also gets into that cost and risk. You can start sharing some of those risks that you're having that right now as a single organization is kind of scary, but if you can share some of those risks, especially around the HR issues, that's really possible. And I'm also looking at time here, so I'm going to kind of skip ahead and talk about now engaging your board of directors. Because the really important thing about doing this type of work, doing collaborations, partnerships, alliances, parents, and doing mergers, is you really need to engage your board of directors. But how do you do that? How do you start this conversation? Well, every board of directors is different. Some boards are eager to have the strategic discussions, and others are very, very scared to. So you really need to take a pulse of your board to kind of figure out where they are. But it's really important to begin with the board of directors and not get too far ahead of them when discussing a restructuring strategy. So we have a couple of suggestions for you. First, go back to your strategic plan and that strategic planning work that you did. I'm working on the assumption that all of you have an active strategic plan. And conduct a SWOT analysis. Analyze your organization's strengths and your weaknesses. Look to see what the opportunities are out there, and also what are the threats out there in the field that you need to be really focusing on. And if you've recently completed a SWOT analysis, you can use that existing one to examine any type of restructuring strategy. If you haven't done one in a while, then this is a great opportunity to do so. Our second suggestion is have this conversation with your board about strategy. And we're not just talking about this restructuring strategy, but all strategies. Like, what is the strategy our organization wants to take on in the next few years? And what's going to be the best way to address our needs? and then ask your board some of the questions we've been asking in this presentation. So coming into your board and saying, we need a merge, can be kind of like, whoa, a little overwhelming. But if you come and start talking about what's in the best interest of our organization in order to make sure that we are being impactful on our mission, how can we be more mission effective? What strategy should we use? And then having this restructuring that discussion within that strategy matrix. All right, so we are now near the end of our time. I would love to answer any other questions that folks have about any of these models, or how to have the conversation about restructuring, or various different scenarios that are out there. So I'd love to have any additional questions. But if there are no questions at this time, because there's been a lot of information, you can always feel free to reach out to me. So you'll see that my email is on here. It's mary@missionplusstrategy.com. Please feel free to reach out, email me, and we can set up a conversation, and we can talk about any of the questions, concerns, ideas, thoughts, brainstorming you would like to have about strategic restructuring as a strategy for your organization.
Thank you so much, Mary. Also, we are going to have in our Housing Matters Conference in October 27 and 28. So if you want to continue the conversation, Mary is going to have a presentation there. I have a question that is about the presentation and is going to be shared. Yes, as I tell you, this webinar is recorded, and we are going to send you the link and also the PowerPoint slides for you. Okay? I don't think so we have any other questions. If you have any other questions, just please write them down in the box. We can wait a minute, Mary.
Oh, yes, most definitely.
No, I don't think so at this point we have any more questions. Remember, we're going to have our annual conference in October 27, 28 in Bloomington. So all of you, please, I hope we can see you there. And thank you so much, Mary, for this valuable information. And I hope it helps to you guys too.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we're going to end the webinar now.